When a woman ignores you, most men panic. They chase, they explain, they try harder, but the king does not beg for attention, he commands it. In this video, you'll learn what to do when you're met with silence, coldness, or distance, not through force, but through a subtle power strategy that flips the entire game in your favor. When a woman ignores you, the average man believes he has been dismissed. He interprets her silence as final, as if the trial is over and the verdict has been declared. He does not see that silence is often not the end, but the beginning of a new kind of warfare. In the court of power, words are the weapons of the weak. The truly strategic, the ones who understand the depths of influence, know that absence is sharper than presence. Indifference, when wielded properly, is not passivity. It is calculated dominance. A woman's indifference can be a mirror. It reflects not who she is, but who you are. If you chase, it exposes your hunger. If you panic, it reveals your insecurity. If you explain, it shows you are desperate to be understood. When true rulers never care for being understood, only for being respected. She studies you, not through questions, but through silence. That silence is her instrument to reveal your form. The moment you react, the game is hers. Understand this. Indifference is never without intention. Even if she is unaware of her power, her silence is not meaningless. There are only two reasons a woman ignores you: to punish you or to provoke you. Either she is withdrawing her attention to assert control, or she is testing your position, your self-worth, your strength, your emotional discipline. Most men will collapse under this silence. They begin to rationalize it. Maybe she's busy. Maybe I upset her. Maybe if I just send one more message. But the king does not rationalize what does not serve him. He interprets the battlefield not emotionally, but tactically. When indifference enters the room, it is a shift in power. You are no longer dealing with affection. You are dealing with leverage, and leverage is not emotional. It is cold. It is structured. It waits for you to misstep, to act out of character, to reveal need. Because in the world of strategy, the first one to move is the one who is weaker. Your impulse to respond, to seek clarity, to demand attention, is exactly what you must suppress. There is something far more dangerous than being disliked. It is being predictable. And when she ignores you, she expects your next move. She expects a message, a question, a confession. When you do what she expects, you confirm her power. But when you do nothing, when you respond not with desperation but detachment, the entire frame begins to tilt. Suddenly, she is the one unsure. Suddenly, she is the one wondering. You must not see her indifference as rejection. You must see it as bait, and like any predator, if you lunge at the bait, you end up in the trap. But if you pause, if you stare back without hunger, if you wait without twitching, then she begins to question the very tool she used. The weapon of indifference begins to lose its edge, because what is more unsettling than a man who doesn't flinch when abandoned? A man who acts as if nothing was lost. A thing too often seen is a thing too easily dismissed. The human mind assigns worth not based on truth, but on availability. The moment something is always present, it is stripped of its mystery, its magnetism, its majesty. This is not merely psychology. It is power at its most primal. Scarcity does not merely increase value, it creates it. In love, in war, in rule, what is rare is revered, and what is common is consumed and forgotten. The greatest kings of history were not those who begged to be seen, but those who mastered their appearance. They knew when to show themselves, and more importantly, when to disappear. Their power did not lie in constant presence. It lay in strategic absence. The same principle applies when a woman begins to ignore you. Most men, in that moment, rush to correct the imbalance. They offer themselves completely. They reply faster. They become overly present, and in doing so, They bury themselves under the weight of their own availability. But a woman, like any force of nature, does not respond to words. She responds to shifts in energy, in pattern, in perception. When you make yourself too available, she no longer sees a man. She sees an object. Something that can be picked up or put down at her convenience. She does not feel drawn to you. She feels surrounded by you. You become air, necessary perhaps, but invisible, unappreciated, unnoticed. To breed desire, you must become distant, not absent but elusive. You must be the flame that burns steadily, yet never too close, because once she knows she can have your attention at any moment, she no longer needs to earn it. And what requires no effort to possess requires no effort to keep. Your time, your responses, your attention, these must be dispensed like gold, not water, rare, precise, controlled. This does not mean silence for the sake of silence. That is the tactic of the fool. It means you withdraw to elevate your value. Your absence must speak. It must imply that you are not waiting by the gates of her affection, but ruling over your own empire. That your attention is not a reaction, it is a reward. You do not step back in weakness. You step back in command, because when something becomes rare, it becomes wanted. And when something is always there, it becomes forgotten. The hunger for something begins not when it is in front of you, but when it is gone. This is the secret those who chase never understand. The more you show up uninvited, the more she forgets what it feels like to miss you. And without the opportunity to miss you, she never remembers your value. You become the man who is always there, until the day she stops looking entirely. In the mind of a woman, scarcity creates story. She starts to wonder, she starts to imagine, she questions why you've stepped away, why your attention is no longer guaranteed, and that question becomes curious, that curiosity becomes an obsession. And not because you demanded it, but because you denied her the certainty she once had about you. You become the mystery she can no longer solve, the riddle she desperately wants to answer, and in that state, she becomes the pursuer, even if she does not realize it. Because a man who withdraws with elegance builds a silence that echoes louder than any confession of love ever could. She does not chase you for words. She chases you for meaning. And when your absence feels more significant than another man's presence, she learns the brutal truth. What's scarce becomes sacred. In every interaction, be it romantic, political, or strategic, there is a frame, a silent structure, an invisible battlefield where one person sets the rules and the other follows. To control the frame is not to speak louder, but to define the terms of engagement without uttering a word. When a woman ignores you, the first thing that is stolen from you is not her affection. It is your control of the frame. Suddenly, she dictates the tempo, the silence, the direction of emotion. And most men, without understanding the mechanics of influence, step into the frame she has prepared for them. They respond, they pursue, they explain. They begin reacting instead of commanding. The man who loses control of the frame becomes trapped in someone else's story. He waits for responses. He analyzes silences. He seeks permission. Every move he makes becomes a reply, not a decision. And in doing so, he becomes predictable, soft, emotionally visible. But power is never held by the visible. It is held by the one who dictates the unseen. If she ignores you and you respond emotionally, you are no longer a man. You're an actor in her theater. Your character is being written by her absence. Your role becomes defined by her attention. This is where most fall. Not from weakness, but from lack of awareness that a game is even being played. The king does not enter another's frame. He imposes his own, not through force, not through pleading, but through control of presence, of emotion, of meaning. When she begins to ignore you, the immediate reaction of the untrained mind is to question what went wrong, to fix, to chase. But these are moves played within her reality. The man who understands power does not chase a disappearing figure. He reshapes the structure in which both of them exist. You must act as though her silence is irrelevant, not because it is, but because acknowledging it openly gives it power. Power over your attention, power over your energy, power over your value. When she becomes distant, you become vast. When she withholds, you create more. You elevate yourself beyond the interaction, not in arrogance, but in posture, in narrative, in self-respect. She no longer sees herself at the center of your attention, but at the edge of your kingdom, trying to look in. Control of the frame is not maintained by talking. It is maintained by not needing to talk. Every message you do not send, every emotion you do not express, every explanation you refuse to give, they all reinforce your position as the one who governs the emotional terrain. And it is emotional terrain that wins battles of desire, not logic or persuasion. You must become the standard, not the seeker. She must measure herself against your world, not the other way around. There is a hidden art in making someone feel like they are losing something they chose to ignore. That art is built on a frame. You must not argue for your place in her life. You must act as if it is she who is negotiating for a seat in yours. And if she hesitates, if she retreats, if she becomes silent, you remain still, not as a statue, but as a mountain, silent not because you have no words, but because the words must now come from her if the frame is to be shared again. She must step into your world, your silence, your distance, your value. And when she does, it must feel earned, not given, because what is given without demand is never respected. And what is earned through your absence will be guarded with fear, curiosity, and reverence. Power is not always expressed through volume, force, or visibility. In fact, the most devastating form of control is not loud, it is silent. It is not what is said that commands the room, but what is withheld. And in the theater of relationships, where emotion is both currency and weapon, silence is the sovereign tool of a ruler who does not need to announce his dominance. When a woman ignores you, the greatest mistake is to fill the silence she has created. Because silence is not emptiness, it is leverage. She offers you a void, and the weak man rushes to fill it. The strong man lets it stretch. To understand silence as a form of power, one must first understand reaction as a form of surrender. Every time you respond impulsively to being ignored, you hand her the script. You confirm that her absence disturbs you, that her attention is your oxygen. You teach her that silence can provoke action from you, that emotional withdrawal can extract commitment, validation, or pursuit. This is the most dangerous dynamic that can form, where one person dictates terms through inaction and the other scrambles to restore connection. The moment this rhythm is established, the ruler becomes the ruled, and the man becomes the follower of her silence. But the king never plays such roles. He understands that true power is proven not in how you speak, but in how long you can wait. His silence is not passive, it is calculated. It speaks louder than words and cuts deeper than explanations. A man in silence becomes a mirror. He forces the other to confront their own games, their own tactics, their own insecurities. When she receives no reaction, she is left with her own echo, and that echo begins to torment her. Because what cannot be read, what cannot be predicted, what cannot be moved, becomes mysterious, and mystery breeds obsession. There is a reason the ancient world feared the silent leader more than the raging tyrant. The tyrant reveals his cards. The silent ruler plays a longer game. He allows others to exhaust themselves trying to interpret him, while he builds advantage in the shadows. In romance, this same dynamic unfolds. The man who does not react becomes the man she cannot read, and the man she cannot read becomes the man she cannot control. Most men hand over their emotional blueprint with every text, every call, every explanation. But the rare one, the composed one, the silent one, he becomes an enigma, not cold, not rude, but unreachable by normal means. Silence is not about ignoring her in return. That is revenge, and revenge belongs to the weak. Silence is about transcending the conversation entirely. You are not playing the game she is playing. You are not in the same arena. Her attempt to trigger you through absence is met with stillness so complete, it disorients. She expects noise. You give her nothing. She expects proof of care. You offer no defense, and in that space something shifts. She begins to question the power of her own silence. Not because you told her, but because your calm presence, your refusal to react, begins to disturb the very strategy she relied upon. Silence is the province of those who do not fear loss, the ones who can sit with discomfort, with ambiguity, with the unknown, without collapsing into need. A man who speaks too soon proves that he needs resolution. A man who waits in silence proves that he already possesses it within himself. And in the end, the one who does not need to speak becomes the one everyone listens to, not because he demands attention, but because his restraint commands it. His silence becomes a prophecy. His stillness becomes a presence. And in a world addicted to noise, the man who masters silence becomes the loudest voice in the room. Desire, in its raw form, is a wild force. It consumes reason, overrides discipline, and bends men until they no longer resemble rulers, but beggars of affection. To chase desire is to submit to it. It is to become a servant to what was meant to serve you. The king does not chase desire. He sculpts it. He directs it like an artist directs the eye to the focal point of a painting. Desire must never dictate your movement. It must respond to your gravity. When a woman begins to pull away, to create distance, to withhold warmth, the instinct of the untrained man is to pursue. He believes that persistence will win her back, that affection will soften her silence. But this is a misreading of the game. For every step he takes toward her, she takes one step back. Not because she no longer desires him, but because he has relinquished the one thing that makes a man desirable, his center. The moment you begin to chase, you position yourself beneath her, and nothing kills attraction faster than a man who gives up the throne of his self-worth just to sit at the edge of her attention. The man who directs desire understands that it flows toward strength, not submission. It follows those who are in motion, not those who wait by the gates. If you want her to be drawn to you, you must become the flame, not the moth. And that requires building a life that radiates purpose, certainty, and detachment. Not detachment from women, but detachment from needing any particular woman to feel whole. You must become the one who chooses, not the one who hopes to be chosen. This posture does not arise from arrogance, but from the deepest form of internal alignment, a sense that your value is not negotiable. To direct desire is not to manipulate, it is to magnetize. It is to understand that people are not attracted to those who chase them, but to those who make them question their own worth in comparison. The moment she feels that you are willing to walk away without hesitation, she is forced to reevaluate her position, because most men cannot walk away. They linger, they wait for closure, they demand an explanation. But the king gives neither explanation nor complaint. He moves, and the world notices. He withdraws, and silence becomes louder than any plea for affection. Women, like kingdoms, are drawn to men who have mastered themselves, who do not flinch under emotional pressure, who do not bend when affection is withdrawn. The woman who ignores you is often testing to see whether your confidence is real or borrowed. She wants to see whether your presence is a mask or a foundation. And if you continue to pursue, to explain, to fight for her validation, she sees the mask slip. But if you remain still, if you continue building, leading, ruling, then she must confront the unsettling truth that her absence has no power over you. This truth is not spoken, it is felt in your timing, in your silence, in your refusal to chase. You do not seduce her with words, but with mystery, with elegance, with detachment. You shape the atmosphere, and if she wishes to breathe in it, she must come to you. This is how desire becomes yours to control, not through force, but through absence of need, not by proving yourself, but by becoming the man whose very existence is proof enough. A man who walks as if he already has everything, and thus makes others question what they're missing by not being near him. A woman's silence is not a verdict. It is a challenge, not to win her back, but to reveal whether you are ruled by emotion or governed by principle. Most men, when ignored, fall into noise, into panic, into performance, but the king falls into nothing. He does not chase, he does not explain, he does not beg for what walks away. Instead, he sharpens his silence, controls the frame, and withdraws with such calm detachment that the one who ignored him begins to feel the weight of her own absence. Because when your energy is no longer centered around her validation, it returns to where it belongs. Your purpose, your value, your empire. You do not react to being ignored, you define it. You turn absence into mystique, distance into desire, and silence into strength. You do not play her game, you force her to play yours, because the moment she sees that your world remains intact without her, she begins to ask a far more dangerous question: what kind of man is this? Who did not collapse when I walked away? And in that question, your power is reborn.